Focus on Headline. And let's take a look at what major issues are making the headlines today on Focus on Headline. For this, joining us in the studio, we have our usual Wednesday reporters in Han-dan and Yoon Hae-jung. Guys, welcome back.
Good evening and Happy New Year.
And good evening to Tan. I did see Hae-jung yesterday, so Happy New Year's to you. Big things. Do you have any New Year's resolutions? I've been asking all of our reporters the same question.
Well, it's the same old resolution that I've been repeating every year, but I'm going to cut down on carbs. I'm going to drink decaffeinated coffee only, and I'm going to drastically cut alcohol consumption.
What is the point of drinking no caffeine coffee?
Well, at least I can get a taste of coffee. I mean, unless without all the negative effects.
I mean, unless you're like pregnant and you really want that taste of coffee, but we want it for the wake up, right?
Well, at least I can get the taste of it.
That's right. Well, cutting back on alcohol, that's everyone's New Year's resolutions, it seems like these days. Well, good to see you guys once again. Speaking of New Year's, we have President Yoon Suk-yeol hosting the New Year's greetings meeting at the top office. But this, I believe, was taking place, at the Cheongwon there, the Blue House, inviting top 5 officials and representatives from each sector. Tan, you're going to start us off. Tell us more about this.
Sure. President Yoon, hosting the New Year's event, said that although Korea faced extreme difficulties at home and abroad last year, the government was able to overcome crises by working together with the people, emphasizing that he will stay focused on the livelihoods of the people with stronger resolve. The president promised utmost efforts to revitalize the economy. Some 200 people, including National Assembly Speaker Kim Jin-pyo, Supreme Court Chief Justice Cho Hee-dae, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo, and National Election Commission Chairman Roh Tae-ak were present, along with the representatives of the business, labor, and religious circles. Interim leader of the ruling People Power Party, Han Dong-hun, was also there, meeting with President Yoon in person for the first time since becoming the new chief. Opposition Chief Lee Jae-myung and Democratic Party members were unable to attend as Lee is now recovering in intensive care unit after getting stabbed in the neck during his visit to Busan, and Hae-jung will have more details on this next. It was a 40-minute standing event, and the top office explained that in consideration of the difficult economic conditions, the event was scaled back this year, omitting various celebratory performances.
And of course, President Yoon is also set to start receiving New Year's policy briefings starting tomorrow on Thursday, but not in a typical way, apparently. Tan, what's different this year?
Well, it was normally held in a way in which ministers each gave policy briefings, but President Yoon this time will also invite members of the public and experts to take part this year, so all participants can hold policy debates. Around 10 sessions of debates will be held starting tomorrow under the tagline, Livelihood Discussions with the President. Kicking off with the first round of debate titled A Vibrant Economy for the People, participants will share views and hold discussions on a wide range of issues encompassing housing, jobs, public safety, medical reform, and tackling the low birth rate. Such change reflects the government's state administration policy that's very much focused on revamping people's livelihoods and on closer communication with the people. The sessions are also aimed at promoting cooperation across ministries, with the session on people's livelihood and job diplomacy set to bring together officials from the foreign, industry, and culture ministries, as well as the Defense Acquisition Program Administration, the State Defense Procurement Agency. The new format is part of the government's efforts to implement Yoon's vision for an action-oriented, problem-solving government, not a government that just carries out reviews, which he outlined in his New Year's Day address.
Yeah, one of the things that we saw at the very start of the Yoon administration almost 2 years ago is that his vow to sort of get closer and communicate better with the public, right, which is why we saw something very different in President Yoon in that he did all those doorstepping sessions, which unfortunately after a few months it was called off. There is no more these doorstepping sessions, but he's going back to that, his pledge of kind of communicating better with the public. So it is going to be quite interesting when you're going to have, again, I don't know how the members of the public are going to be invited through this and under what system, but when you get the public involved, obviously they're the ones that know what's going on right now, some of the biggest issues in the society, and to get them involved, not to mention just experts as well, not just the politicians and the lawmakers. I think it'll be a good plan moving forward here. Polina says, my question, SJ, is anybody from Arirang going to these debates?
Not that we know of for now.
Not that we know of. I don't know if anyone wants to go or can take part, but nevertheless, something that we've been covering. We were saying that yesterday the new year was only 2 days old, but there was so many different issues happening. This including over in the southeastern port city of Busan, where, of course, we talked about Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung being stabbed by an assailant. We know that he was airlifted to the Seoul National University Hospital. There was a surgery that happened. Now, police announced on Wednesday that they plan to seek an arrest warrant for the suspect in the stabbing attack. Haejung, let's get the details of this.
Right. The assailant, identified only by his surname Kim, is a man in his mid-60s, accused of stabbing Lee, the chairman of the main opposition Democratic Party, in the neck while posing as an autograph seeker Tuesday morning. The attack occurred after Lee toured the construction site of a new airport on Busan's Gadok Island, and Kim was immediately overpowered and then detained at the scene. So today, the Busan Police Agency said they plan to seek a warrant to formally arrest Kim, most likely on charges of attempted murder. Earlier, the police revealed that Kim had confessed to intending to kill Lee. Additionally, a district court issued a warrant to search Kim's house and office as part of the investigation. DP leader Lee Jae-myung, who suffered an injury to his jugular vein, was flown by helicopter to Seoul and underwent surgery at the Seoul National University Hospital. According to a party's spokesperson, Lee underwent vascular reconstruction surgery. He is currently recovering in the ICU, but so far it is unclear when Lee will be able to leave the hospital. The police are investigating allegations that Kim had been following Lee at other events in Gimhae and Busan since late last year. A few of Lee's supporters claimed that Kim had tried to approach Lee several times in the past. Kim reportedly told the police that he tried to kill Lee. However, he did not disclose why he wanted to kill him, which requires further investigation. So far, what we know is that he is a resident of Chungnam Province. He's a real estate agent, and that the attack is classified as a premeditated crime. Kim does not have a history of drugs or mental health issues and was not under the influence of alcohol at the time of the crime, according to the police. In the meantime, the Busan Police Agency executed a search warrant for the ruling and opposition central parties to verify the party affiliation of Kim. The police reportedly checked Kim's party membership by comparing party membership rosters, as the current political party law stipulates that a court warrant is required to inspect party membership lists for criminal investigations.
So, from what I understand, the Busan Metropolitan Police Agency investigators already conducted they raided the residence of the gentleman that's in question here, not to mention his office. And like Haejung said, it seems like he's right. He runs a real estate agency. They got as far as to find out that he arrived the day before the attack actually occurred. And I'm sure maybe some of our listeners here in Korea, or our reporters as well, they might have seen the graphic video that surfaced where he just didn't seem right? I mean, he was wearing like a blue crown that said, "I am Lee Jae-myung," I think what it was. And then he was kind of bum rushing the crowd saying, "I want the autograph." And it just kind of really looks like he was just an avid fan of Lee Jae-myung. And that's kind of the scary part of all this. But again, speaking of which, this brazen attack on the opposition leader Lee Jae-myung shed light on past political violence against other high-profile politicians. We had among the victims former president, then conservative opposition party leader Park Geun-hye, former DP chief Song Yeon-gil, You also had former U.S. Ambassador to South Korea, Mark Lippert, involved in a knife attack as well. Donna, let's talk about some of these incidents.
But SJ, before we move on to our next story, I just realized that Arirang News Team's presidential office correspondent will definitely be there at the debate with President Yoon.
Okay.
So that starts tomorrow to report things as they unfold. So be sure to keep close tabs on Arirang News and tune into Korea Now later in the evening as well. So back to the political violence in the past. In 2006, then conservative opposition party leader Park Geun-hye was stabbed while attending a political rally ahead of local elections. She suffered an 11-centimeter gash to her face that required 60 stitches and prevented her from speaking normally for weeks. The assailant told police he was frustrated at having to serve prison time for crimes he did not commit. The man in his 50s got a 10-year prison sentence. In 2022, Lee Jae-myung's predecessor as leader of the Democratic Party, Song Yong-gil, was attacked in Seoul by an elderly man wearing a traditional robe who approached him from behind and struck him on the head several times with a hammer. Song, who was also serving as manager for Lee Jae-myung's presidential campaign at the time, underwent surgery before returning to the campaign trail a day later. The assailant was a liberal activist in his 70s with his own YouTube channel. The prosecution indicted him, but he was not punished by the law as he committed suicide in a detention center just days before the first trial. There has also been an attack against a foreign envoy. In 2015, then U.S. Ambassador Mark Lippert needed 80 stitches after his face was slashed with a fruit knife at a forum discussing Korean unification in Seoul. He spent 5 days in hospital and underwent surgery for a big cut on the right side of his face, as well as a puncture wound on his left wrist that caused nerve damage, which was later repaired. The attack was carried out by a 50-something-year-old Korean nationalist who said he was protesting against the annual South Korea-U.S. military drills. The man who was arrested at the scene was handed over to trial on charges including attempted murder and is currently serving time after being sentenced to 12 years in prison by the Supreme Court. The prosecution defined the stabbing on Lee Jae-myung in Busan as a hate crime against a political party leader and announced that it would establish a special investigation team at the Busan District Prosecutor's Office to get to the bottom of the attack. Prosecutors also vowed to swiftly take measures to prevent acts of violence in the run-up to the April general elections.
Again, I mean, it really could have been disastrous. It could have been deadly. We talked about how the jugular vein was damaged in the attack, and you often hear jugular veins, and there's a cut on it. It bleeds profusely, and that's what leads to bleeding to death, basically. And so, luckily, it wasn't too much of a damage that Lee Jae-myung is able to, I guess. He's alive right now. He's got the successful surgery. I believe that he's going to be out of the ICU and into a normal part of the hospital in a few days is what they're saying. But there was always a lot of questions, right, into these security affairs of all things, because especially during like the election times, you have a lot of these politicians going to like markets, for instance. So it's everyday people, and they're going there to shake hands and things like that. And you, not once do you think, even though they have security guards, I mean, who knows what's going to happen? Even with this incident with Lee Jae-myung, it was kind of like, he looked like a fan of Lee Jae-myung. And so how do you differentiate someone who's against a politician or for a politician? But it's usually after incidents like this that security does get very, very tight. I remember having to meet Mr. Lippert after the attack, and we were alone together at an event, and they had the security all around me just in case. And I was like, and luckily Mr. Lippert said, I mean, chill out, guys. I mean, no SJ. But again, we're hoping, again, leading up to the general elections, there is no acts of violence like this. Also, the Korean National Police Agency decided to establish a dedicated protection team for key political figures. such as party leaders in the wake of the attack against DP leader Lee Jae-myung. So, Hae-jung, let's get more on this.
So the National Police Agency said today that it instructed city and provincial governments across the country to take measures to protect the safety of key political figures and further develop contingency plans. The police agency plans to organize a dedicated protection team for major political party leaders at the city and provincial government level to thoroughly prepare for any incidents such as surprise attacks. The protection teams will consist of 1 to 3 police squads, which means mobilizing 60 to 180 officers, and will operate flexibly depending on the situation of each city. Now, when major public events are scheduled, the safety protection measures will be organized through consultations with the political parties, and this protection team will be operated separately from a full-time, round-the-clock security personnel. Police plans to establish safety measures as well as a hotline in advance by discussing appropriate measures with the relevant political party when key political figures are set to visit somewhere else or attend a special event. The police will also actively deploy forces in both uniform and in plain clothes to block any potential threat, and commanders such as the police chief will work at the site to take charge. According to relevant regulations, the police operates a separate personal safety protection team for party leaders during the official campaign period, which is 14 days before the election day. But the police decided to activate the protection team early on in response to the raid on the DP leader. National Police Commissioner Yoon Suk-yeol issued a statement immediately after the raid, saying that the police will strengthen the protection of key figures to prevent similar cases from recurring. Yoon later chaired a command meeting and emphasized that follow-up measures, including the operation of a dedicated protection team for key personnel, be implemented without delay.
Let's move on here. Talk about a social issue that's going to be becoming bigger and bigger each day, I guess. We've been talking about the low birth rate here. We've been recording record low fertility rate as well. I remember just around last year, around this time, we were talking about the fertility rate. It's something like 0.84. Now, I believe the last time we talked, it was at 0.7. All of this is leading to many schools shutting down. Why? There's just not enough students. Apparently, the number of students entering elementary school this year is expected to fall to the 300,000 range for the first time in history. There's even talks about in 2 years that level falling to the 200,000 range. So you could kind of tell how quickly the population is declining. Tan, really serious figures we're looking at here. Let's get the details of this.
Right. According to the Education Ministry, the number of children eligible for school this year was a little over 413,000 as of December last year. But given that the number of children who actually enroll in school in March is usually around 90% of those eligible for school, the total figure is expected to fall to the 300,000 range, a range the country has not seen before. Taking Seoul, for instance, the number of children eligible for school, including all national, public, and private schools across the city, decreased by over 10% compared to the previous year to 59,500. Figures continued to decline after hitting 78,000 in 2019, then slipping to the 60,000 range for the first time last year before falling to the 50,000 range this year. The sharp decline from 70,000 to 50,000 happened in just 2 years. And the problem is that the decline in the number of students is expected to continue as the country's birth rate decline accelerates with no end in sight. The number of children born in 2017 who entered elementary school this year stood at around 357,800, a sharp decrease of more than 48,000 compared to the year before. And given the current trend, the number of children born in 2019 who will enter elementary school in 2026 will hover around 302,000. And again, more than 10% of them are deferred or exempted from school due to various reasons like study abroad or health reasons, which means that the number of students actually entering elementary school in 2026 will likely fall below the 300,000 mark, like you briefly mentioned, SJ. So the figure is expected to plunge to the 200,000 range from 400,000 range in just 2 years. Education officials are calling for prompt measures to tackle the threatening decline in the number of students, which could force school shutdowns and mergers, and also infringe upon students' right to learning, not only in rural areas, but also in metropolitan areas.
Yeah, I mean, we often talk about like the population declining and it's over like decades, right? But when you're saying in a span of 2 years, only 2 years for the number of elementary school enrollment to drop by something like 100,000 nationwide. I mean, it's crazy figures here. And it's like you said, it's not just the rural areas where the schools are closing. If you look at some of the maps in Seoul, there's a lot of places that has schools in it and next to it, Pegyo, which means the school is closed down now. And even in the capital, Seoul, you're seeing schools closed down. Think about how things are like in rural areas. But this is certainly a very grave situation right now in the South Korean society. Maybe we might be talking about further in regards to this with an expert sometime next week, so do stick around for that. Let's now talk about the climate, because according to the Korea Meteorological Administration, the year 2023 was the warmest year of all time for South Korea, as global warming heated up the Korean peninsula to reach an average temperature of 13.7 degrees Celsius. Haejang, tell us how hot not just the world, but the Korean peninsula is getting.
Right. The year 2023 marked the highest annual mean temperature since 1973. The year considered the starting point for weather records in South Korea when the country's meteorological networks were significantly beefed up. And last year's temperature exceeds the previous top record of 13.4 degrees Celsius set in 2016. The record-breaking temperatures last year were somewhat foreseen given the mean temperatures nationwide were higher than average years all throughout January to November. 6 months in the year 2023, specifically March, April, May, June, and August and September, ranked within the top 10 temperatures for each month, with March and September being the hottest months on record. Last month, the weather stayed warm by and large, excluding when a cold snap gripped the country for about a week in mid-December. And the average temperature nationwide, recording below freezing temperatures, only lasted from December 16th to the 25th. In particular, on December 8th, many parts of the region recorded the highest temperature of the month, with some going above 20 degrees Celsius in the daytime. Of the 97 climate observation sites nationwide, 59 set new December high temperature records last month. However, Korea was not the only country that was unusually hot last year. While official analyses from major organizations are yet to be released, no one disputes the estimation that last year was the hottest year on record globally. According to the World Meteorological Organization's interim report released last November, 2023 is almost certain to be the hottest year in 174 years of record keeping, with an average 1.4 degrees Celsius warmer than pre-industrial levels from January to October. Meanwhile, Korea's State Weather Agency said average annual rainfall recorded 1,740.3 millimeters last year, the second highest since 2003, citing high levels of precipitation in May and during the summertime.
That's right. And during the July in the central region was when we talked about all those flooding and all the deadly floodings that occurred as well. But I mean, you're seeing extreme weathers. I think October. or November, there was southern parts of the country that recorded 30 degrees Celsius in October and November, which is ridiculous temperatures there. And usually what they say is if you have like hot summers, it means that there's going to be cold winters. And just like Haejung said, I mean, we had like maybe a brief cold snap for about like a week or so. But I've been coming to work with this on. I haven't worn my jacket since the cold snap that we had back in December. And so we are witnessing some of the warmer December and January temperatures. And even looking at the temperatures in the week ahead. I mean, we got the reports that there's going to be a cold snap starting tomorrow. And it's only like about -3 degrees, which is considered not that cold for a beginning of January temperatures here. So very concerning, very volatile weather that we're seeing right now. And there's still people who do not believe that there is a climate crisis going on. Let's move on to the latest in Japan's earthquake. Death toll has now risen to at least 65 as of the last time that we checked here. Rescuers continue their search for survivors, from what I understand, because of the terrible weather conditions. It is making these search and rescue operations very difficult for the authorities there. Also, we had a 5.5 magnitude aftershock striking the Noto Peninsula in the Ishikawa prefecture. Don, it is very concerning what's going on over there. Let's get the latest developments.
Right. The death toll has risen to 65 in the central Japanese prefecture of Ishikawa as of this afternoon, with more than 370 wounded, according to local news outlets. Local authorities warned the death toll is likely to climb further. Rescuers are racing against time to save residents trapped in the rubble of Monday's 7.5 magnitude quake that triggered multiple aftershocks, collapsing buildings, sparking fires, and triggering tsunami alerts as far away as eastern Russia. And this, as authorities warned, heavy rain, landslides, and repeated aftershocks could hamper relief efforts. About 2,000 Japanese self-defense forces are now involved in rescue operations. This while more than 46,000 people are in shelters in Ishikawa and Toyama prefectures. Nearly 34,000 households remain without power in Ishikawa prefecture, while 90% of the houses are completely or almost completely destroyed in the prefecture's hardest hit areas. A footage from public broadcaster NHK on Tuesday showed a 7-story building collapsing and smoke engulfing in a central area of Wajima. The Noto Peninsula of the prefecture was most severely hit, with several hundred buildings ravaged by fire and houses flattened. And a 5.5 magnitude aftershock struck off the Noto Peninsula at around 11 a.m. this morning at a depth of 10 kilometers, according to the Japan Meteorological Agency. Since Monday, Japan has been hit by at least 155 quakes. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida held a press conference this morning in which he said he would take charge of disaster management. He said he'll be the Director General, mobilizing the self-defense forces, the Japan Coast Guard, the fire brigade, and the police. He said it was proving extremely difficult for vehicles to access areas in the north of the Noto Peninsula, and that the government had already spent supplies by ship. He urged residents in the affected areas to act safely as the risk of house collapses and landslides is increasing in areas where the tremors were strong.
It has not been a very good start to the new year for Japan, because on Tuesday, a Japan Airlines aircraft also collided with an earthquake relief aircraft at Tokyo's Haneda Airport, and all the passengers and the crew made it out in the passenger plane, but 5 crew members on board the Coast Guard plane lost their lives because of this collision. Haejung, tell us what happened over there.
A plane burst into flames at Tokyo's Haneda Airport following a collision with another aircraft. The Japanese Airlines Airbus A350 had just arrived from Sapporo when it collided with a Japanese Coast Guard plane that was preparing for takeoff as a part of relief efforts for the major earthquake that struck Japan on Monday. 5 out of the 6 people on board the Coast Guard's Bombardier-8 aircraft died, and the pilot is reportedly in a critical condition. However, all 379 people on board the Japan airline planes survived the impact, and passengers were evacuated before the aircraft became fully engulfed in flames, escaping through emergency chutes. Firefighters spent approximately 6 hours extinguishing the flames, while all 4 runways at Haneda Airport were closed in the aftermath, leaving thousands of travelers stranded. Video shared on social media showed passengers shouting inside the plane while the cabin was filled with smoke. Meanwhile, experts have delivered strong praise to crew members aboard the A350 for their handling of the situation, which saw passengers evacuated in about 20 minutes. While the cause of the collision has not been revealed yet, Japan Airlines officials said the A350 was making a normal entry and landing, and that the aircraft had permission from aviation officials to land. Airbus, the aircraft manufacturer of the A350 plane, said it will send a specialist team to help with the investigation. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said authorities were working to ensure the accident did not affect deliveries of earthquake relief supplies, and expressed sorrow over the deaths of the Coast Guard crew. Now, due to this accident, a lot of flights have been canceled going in and out of Japan, and there may be additional cancellation and delays. So any of our listeners who are set to fly near the area may want to keep an eye on any last-minute changes in the flight schedules.
Also, we're seeing political turmoil sweeping across the Middle East after the death of a Hamas second-in-command, Salah al-Aruri, who's suspected to have been killed in an Israeli drone strike, although Israel has yet to make an official response to this. But, Tan, let's get the latest on this.
A senior Hamas political leader and at least 2 of the Palestinian militant group's military commanders have been killed in an explosion in Beirut, an attack that Hamas and Lebanon blamed on Israeli drone strike. Hamas said Saleh al-Aruri, deputy political leader, was among 7 members of the group killed in the blast at one of its offices. It added that military commanders Samir Fendi and Azam al-Akra also died. Hamas declared that it would suspend ceasefire negotiations that were in progress through the mediation of Egypt and Qatar. Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati condemned the strike and called it a new Israeli crime. Now, fears are growing that the war might spread, with the fight against Hamas now taken into the heart of Lebanon, which hosts Hezbollah, the Shia militant group with strong military ties to Iran. The Hezbollah vowed revenge for the killing, as although al-Aruri was a member of Hamas, not Hezbollah, the Shia militant group believes Israel has committed this assassination by coming into Hezbollah territory, the southern suburbs of Beirut. Iran strongly condemned the killing, with Iran's foreign ministry spokesman Nasser Kanaan calling the attack a violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Lebanon. He called on the UN Security Council to take an immediate and effective response to these terrorist acts of the Zionist regime. The Israeli army on Tuesday declined to comment on the assassination of Aruri in the Lebanese capital. It said the military spokesman Daniel Hagari said the army is in a very high state of readiness on all fronts, defensively and offensively, and that Israel is fully prepared for any scenario. He said that the most important thing Israel must comment on is that Israel is focusing on fighting Hamas. So not much detail from Israel, no confirmation whatsoever.
And so this is what we've been sort of fearing, right? That the armed conflict was going to spread to other countries. But here's the thing, right? Israel has been coming out saying that they've been targeting Hamas commanders, which is their sort of reason for why they were attacking a lot of these civilian infrastructures. But it's coming out more recently with these reports that a lot of these commanders and high officials of Hamas are actually not in Gaza right now. They're in places like Lebanon, they're in Qatar, they're in Egypt, they're in Iran. And so it kind of puts into perspective the situation right now over in the Gaza Strip. But also the war in Ukraine, certainly intensifying even more since the start of the new year. Last Friday, Russia unleashing its biggest air attack on Ukraine since the war broke out. Both sides have been engaging in major offensives. Hejong, let's get also the updates in the war over in Ukraine.
Right. Last Friday, this is December 29th local time, Russia launched its largest airstrike since the war broke out with 122 missiles and 36 drones across the Ukrainian cities of Kyiv, Kharkiv, Odessa, and Dnipro, killing around 40 people. And the next day, on Saturday, Ukraine targeted the Russian border city of Belgorod on Saturday in retaliation for the attack that was carried out by Russia. This attack killed at least 25 people and injured more than 100, and Russian President Vladimir Putin vowed to avenge Russia. Moving on to this Tuesday, Russian missiles and drones struck Kyiv and the northeastern city of Kharkiv, killing at least 5 people and leaving about 100 injured. Ukraine's authorities had said the attacks caused widespread damage and hit power supplies, leaving a total of 250,000 homes in and around Kyiv without power. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said since Sunday alone, Moscow had fired 170 drones and dozens of missiles. Ukraine's armed forces said after the drone strikes, 99 missiles of various kinds had been fired in a repeat of last Friday's onslaught from sea and air. They said 72 cruise and supersonic missiles had been destroyed. Among these 72 destroyed, Ukraine downed 10 out of 10 Russian Kinzhal aeroballistic missiles, which are weapons that Putin had claimed were indestructible because of the speed at which they travel. President Zelensky thanked Ukraine's Western allies for supplying Patriot missiles and other air defense systems, adding that Russia would be held responsible for every life taken in Ukraine. And as clashes escalated on the front line, NATO member Poland deployed 4 additional F-16 fighter jets to its eastern border in Ukraine, saying the move was aimed at ensuring the safety of Polish airspace.
Yeah, so like the use of the Russian hypersonic missile is concerning because not only does it speed, but it's also able to change directions mid-flight. And Russia is now kind of upping its attacks right now. And I think they went from thinking, well, this war in Ukraine is lasting longer than we had anticipated, to now them going, well, the longer we drag this out, the better chance that we're probably going to win this because there's, less and less support right now from the West. I mean, initially you had large amounts of money coming in from like the United States and the EU countries and the UK and things like that. And you're seeing less and less support, although EU came out with more assistance. But over time, Russia is believing that the assistance are going to cut off, and we'll see what happens. And of course, all the experts that we've talked to on our show believe that come next winter, this war might continue on as well. Guys, thank you very much for coming in on our Wednesday edition of the program. Have a safe rest of your week, and we'll see you guys again.
Thank you.
You can listen to Korea Now with me, SJ Lee, by downloading the Arirang Radio application or tune in online by visiting www.arirangradio.com. So make sure you tune in Mondays through Fridays, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Korea time.